Is Tennessee adversely affected by a deep run, which they had in the SEC tournament to the championship game? Do you believe they're adversely affected?
Yes. It's why I said they should chuck it to begin with. I was never a believer in the SEC tournament championship game we're trying to win. I'm not one of those people that say, you try to win a tournament. That's what you're supposed to do. No, the important tournament is the national championship or the NCAA tournament. Conference tournaments are one, as we've talked about before, money grabs by the conference themselves. So I would, I absolutely think that going to the SEC tournament title adversely affects the Vols.
Okay, I do not, but all the research I did proves your point. So let's go through some of that if we can. If we can put the story in the chat box, I would like to do that. And then let's look back. First of all, no team has advanced past the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament since 2019. And in all fairness,
be clear, no team who reached the SEC title tournament game went past the Sweet 16.
Right. No team that reached the SEC. I thought I said that. But anyway, no team that reached the SEC championship game has advanced past the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament since 2019. And that was Auburn, who just got red hot, right? I mean, that was one of those situations where that could have been anybody. They could throw a ball up in the air and somehow it went in the basket in that run until they finally got cold or coldish in the semifinals. So that's been the last time that a team has gotten past the Sweet 16. So let's take a look at 2021. There was, of course, no tournament in 2020 because we had this COVID thing. We had Fauci on the television yelling at us and telling us what to do. So those days are over, thank goodness. Let's go back to 2021. Alabama beat LSU 80-79 in the SEC championship game. The Crimson Tide, a 2 seed, made the Sweet 16, which really for a 2 seed, that should be the bare minimum, shouldn't it, Caleb?
Yes. And as a matter of fact, after reading what you said today, I got even more convinced because I'm going to talk about the seeding when you're done, but let's keep going.
Okay. They lost to number 11 seed UCLA in overtime, 88-78. It's worth pointing out, again, I'm proving Caleb's point instead of my own. It's worth pointing out that in overtime, they basically collapsed, which makes me wonder about fatigue. LSU, the team that lost in the SEC championship game, an 8 seed, knocked out in the second round of the tournament, lost to number 1 seed Michigan, 86-78. There's no shame in that. 2022, Tennessee won the SEC tournament by beating Texas A&M 65-50. The Vols, 3 seed, lost in the second round of the NCAA tournament to number 11 seed Michigan. A&M advanced deep into the tournament, but it was the NIT, so that doesn't count. 2023, Texas A&M in the SEC championship game, this time losing to Alabama 82-63. A&M was a 7 seed, lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament to a 10th seed Penn State 76-59. It wasn't even close. They had to look dog tired. Alabama, a 1 seed, knocked out of the tournament in the Sweet 16 by 5th seeded San Diego State. So in and of itself, there's nothing bad about getting knocked out in the Sweet 16, unless you're a 1 seed. And that's bare minimum that you should be able to accomplish. 2024, Auburn beat Florida 86-67 in the SEC championship game. The Tigers, a 4 seed, were upset by Yale 78-76 in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Meanwhile, 10th seeded Colorado upset a number 7 seeded Gators in the round of 64. Caleb, all of that proves your point. I am still of the mindset that these are 20, 21-year-old kids and their bodies bounce back and fatigue is not a factor. But I will enter this into the conversation. What about mental fatigue? What about emotional fatigue? Getting up for that game. Tennessee had to get up for the Auburn game. They had to get up for the Florida game. How many games can you get up for in a month? Because you need to get up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more. And I don't know that Tennessee or any other team can get up. They didn't have to get up for the Texas game in the quarters. But I don't know that you can get up for 8 games in a month. That's asking an awful lot. So I don't agree with you on the physical fatigue, and I pretty much dug my heels in the sand on that. But emotional fatigue, I'll give you some of that. I'm willing to go down that road after running the numbers.
Yeah, I'm going to go physical fatigue, and I'm going to
right.
But I'm going to go both. I'm going to go both because there's 2 points I make. I've said from the start that the SEC tournament game can wear you down, but here's the other point with the SEC tournament game. The point you brought up, you named 6 teams. I'm sorry, you named of the 8 teams. Let's just go back to 2021. Let's go post-COVID, the last 4 years. Of the 8 teams to play in the SEC tournament, 7 made the NCAA tournament. You mentioned Texas A&M. Dave, 6 of the 7 lost before they reached the round that the seeding indicated they should reach. 6 of the 7 lost to lower seeds. So when I say seeding indicated, if you're a 1 seed, you underachieve if you don't make the Final 4, right? Because you're a 1 seed. If you're a 2, well, I'm saying if you're a 2 seed,
yeah,
1 seed is fine.
Yeah, I see where you're going.
Yeah. 6 of them lost before the round that their seeding was projected to get them to. 6 of them lost to lower seeds in the tournament. Like, that's an insane stat. Okay, like, and the only one that didn't was LSU, which was an 8 seed, and then they lost to Michigan in the second round. You're right, no shame in that. But that's a wild stat when you really think about it. And when you take that into account, I don't know how you can look at the SEC tournament. And by the way, when you add Auburn and Tennessee in 2019, then you could say that goes from 6 of 7 to 7 of 9, because Tennessee lost to a lower seed 2 in the NCAA tournament. Now, they were a 2 seed, Purdue was a 3 seed, but still applies. When you take all this into account, I don't really think there's a debate that the SEC tournament wears you down. Now, maybe I haven't tracked fully on this, the number of seniors on a team, the experienced players, the depth, all of that may work in your favor. Like, if you have a bunch of seniors on your team, maybe it won't have the same emotional fatigue as if you have a bunch of freshmen, something like that. But I think in general, yeah, it does wear you down. And Dave, it's no secret that Tennessee's most successful run under Rick Barnes, the only time they didn't lose to a lower seed in the NCAA tournament under Rick Barnes, was last year. What did they do in the SEC tournament last year, Dave? They lost on Friday despite winning the SEC regular season title outright. They were the best team in the SEC from beginning to end, won the regular season title outright, and then in their first game in the tournament, lost to Mississippi State and went home. And then they go and make an Elite 8 run. And if Jonas Aidoo doesn't take himself out of the game because he's scared, they're in the Final 4.
Oh, we got out-physicaled. I mean, I have trouble blaming him for that. I just
think I don't.
Player.
He didn't just get out-physicaled. You can get out-physicaled. You can lose. He was air.
Well, he definitely quit in the second half.
That's what I mean.
Let's steer this back, though. The SEC tournament, I cannot, with good conscience, tell any team that they should lose on purpose, and I'm not going to do that. But I am going to propose something else. Today's Tough Question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney, banksandjones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. Banks & Jones. It's time to stop with the SEC tournament. I mean, you can't tell a young man or a coach that's a competitor at heart, and if you get to this level, you are a competitor at heart. You can't tell that person to not compete at the highest level. That's how they've gotten to that point. The lights are on. The fans are in the seats. Everybody's excited. The officials are making too many foul calls. You cannot ask a young man to turn it off and on. You're just not wired like that. I don't think you can ask many professional athletes to do that. You can in the NFL. That's why they take the last week of the regular season off. So just get rid of the SEC tournament or do this. Here's another idea. How about make it in January? The SEC tournament coming right out of non-conference play. You play an SEC tournament, you are the champion, and then from then on, Caleb, you're selling it, marketing it with Tennessee takes on Florida, the SEC champion on Thursday night, and you've got something you can market and you can spin, and it doesn't take away from your opportunity to go deep in the NCAA tournament. I'm not arguing this on Tennessee's behalf. I'm arguing this on the SEC's behalf. Something needs to change because right now you have a tournament that it was obvious that Greg Sankey was pushing that this tournament is important, even though, is that called gaslighting? When you tell somebody something's true, but it's not?
Well, when you tell somebody something's true or false, but it's the opposite, basically you tell people that they're crazy for believing their own eyes and ears.
Okay, well then he's gaslighting. He's gaslighting SEC basketball fans, isn't he? He's telling them that the SEC tournament is significant when in reality we know it's not, and in fact it might be preventing teams from going deep into the NCAA tournament. And that to me is dastardly. You wouldn't do that in football, would you?
No,
like are nowadays.
I got an even crazier thing to break down for you, Dave.
Lay it on me.
I think outside of the bubble teams, now this wouldn't apply to the SEC this year because pretty much everybody got in, but typically I would say you have an incentive to throw the tournament game, because if an extra team like on the bubble or just off the bubble wins the conference tournament and gets an automatic bid, Dave, that's an extra $2 million for the conference, meaning a little bit extra money in your pocket as a team.
Okay. I'm up for changing anything, because the bottom line is, Dylan points it out, regular season conference leaders should be crowned the champion after the last game. Conference championship games don't matter at all in 90% of sports now.
Now,
Jay says, great idea positioning the SEC tournament in January.
I love it.
Like idea.
I like it because the thing is, the reason that you want to do the SEC tournament is you want to give that bubble to it's an extra chance to get an extra team an automatic bid in the tournament. You know what I mean? Because if a bubble or a non-bubble team, if a bubble or a team not even on the bubble shocks everybody and wins it, circa Georgia 2008, that's an extra team from your conference that's going to the NCAA tournament. It's an extra $2 million. So you want to have the tournament for that reason. But yeah, hold it in January. I kind of love that idea. Now, the principle, I do say I agree with Dylan. Like, I don't like conference postseason games anyway. All due respect to Rory Kramer, I understand what he did with the SEC championship game in football in 1992, but that was a period of time. There's just no way to make it relevant anymore. And
okay, I can fix that too. May I raise my hand?
Yeah.
Okay. Whoever finishes 1 and 2 nowadays, or if they split it into divisions, whoever wins the East and West or North and South, or however they do it, those two teams lead off in the SEC kickoff for the following year in the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta. Those two teams face off. Whoever finishes 1 and 2, and you get rid of the SEC championship game. So you're essentially moving it to the next season, where it's a rematch of sorts, even though they might not have played in the regular season. They were 1 and 2 in the standings, so they get to sort that thing out, and it kicks off the year.
I love that idea. I'm a huge fan of that idea.
I'm throwing heat this morning.
You are. And by the way, I don't know. If I'm the SEC and Big Ten, I would get together in football. This is a different topic for another day, but I just want to throw this out. Forget the conference championship games. How about the Big Ten has a 9-game schedule, SEC has an 8-game schedule. How about they both just work with the NCAA to give everybody a 13-game schedule, so they just move an extra game, so everybody plays the week of conference championship week, and you just have a 13-game schedule with 9 conference games and 4 non-conference games?
Well, the SEC has got to go to 9. It just absolutely.
They won't do it until ESPN makes some concessions.
Now, I understand why they're not doing it, but they absolutely have to do it. Now, Jack, I'm not saying this is across the board. He points out the 2024 UConn won the Big East, and 2023, not 2022, Kansas won the Big Dance and Big 12.
Well, okay, but I already gave this stat a while ago. Only 8 of the last 12 national champions did not win their conference tournament. That's not That's not a coincidence. Just going to say that.
And listen, If you want to take some of the all-time great teams, I'll go ahead and tell you it's pretty simple. They won their conference tournament and they won the NCAA tournament. If you want to take some of the all-time great teams, right? Like, I don't know that Carmelo Anthony's Syracuse team won their Big East tournament, but I'm betting they did.
I'm not sure to look that up.
You know off the top of your head?
I know this. I know this. John Calipari's only national championship. Kentucky had 2 losses that year. One of them was in the SEC tournament.